I have to decide, what do I want from the end of the relationship? And the answer, the deep answer, one that's not always easy to live up to, is I want to come out of it loving more, which means that I have to continue to encounter any parts in me that do not want to show up as love. They want to show up as hurt, or they want to show up as anger, or they want to show up as whatever. To do the inner work of choosing and making that a priority. Okay, this is what's important to me. If love's important to me, then I have to take whatever circumstances that I find myself in as a path to love more. And so those beings who choose that path, and it's not an easy path, but it's a beautiful path, get the rewards. I do find that love is a very responsive energy. And kind of the irony is, like I said at the beginning, many people are looking for love, but to be love, to make yourself a lover, is sometimes a more difficult path than looking for love, but ultimately much more rewarding.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out Looking In, the podcast where we're exploring the human experience through conscious conversations. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and today, listeners, I present you with an opportunity to take the red pill or the blue pill, whatever you decide, because this episode offers a very unique perspective on a topic that is so close and dear to all of our hearts and souls. And basically it comes down to an internal decision how deep we want to understand and feel and experience love this time around. And that is because I'm speaking with Bruce Lyon. Let me give you a little bit of context around Bruce. Bruce is the founder of the Highden Temple in New Zealand. He helped develop the ISTA trainings, which is the International School of Temple Arts. He has many qualifications in ecology, psychology, astrology, esoteric arts and sciences. He's written numerous books and taught extensively around the world. His work was recommended by a friend of mine to me, and that started off with a YouTube video. It is called From Romance to Reality. And I remember one other video years back from a German philosopher, Richard David Precht. You are maybe familiar if you're listening from Germany. And he was speaking about love in a very new way and offered a new framework. And so does Bruce. And that's why I'm saying it's a little bit of the red pill, blue pill situation. His understanding of love is very unique, in my opinion. Something that I did not come across before. And once you immerse yourself in this way of thinking about it and you start understanding it, it'll spill over, obviously, in all areas of your life where love somehow is present. And as the whole universe is, in its core, made out of love, at least what I believe, and I believe that many schools have taught that, and we're using words to refer to something, but in essence I feel like even if it's God, we can use love as a word for that as well. Anyway, don't want to get carried away here. What I want to say is that this conversation really dives deep into the spillover of realizing love within you, and how that affects the relationships you are engaging with romantically, but also friendships, also at work, everywhere, the relationship with the world and yourself. And so it's very powerful. I've learned a lot. And I find myself yet again at one of the spiritual crossroads, as I like to describe them, where I feel like it's time to make an internal decision to, in some parts, go back to sleep and pretend that I haven't really understood, or that I haven't really found. Also, sometimes it's also finding the courage to live from that place. It's the same with Michael Singer's teachings. I find myself at the crossroads of like, hey, do I want to really like apply that framework to my life and be committed in this way to my soul's evolution or not? And this is like an individual decision, right? So anyway, I feel like there's enough said about it now. This is really like also like a very deep conversation, and Bruce he's a force of nature, and I admire his integrity. I admire how he holds the spaces that he holds, and we go into some aspects also of facilitation and what to be aware of when stepping into a leadership role as a facilitator, which is a very nuanced conversation. So we explore that as well. But it is about love. It is about relationships. It is about masculine and feminine, male and female, energies, the universe, your soul, why you are here, all of these very deep things. So without further ado, I'll bring you this episode with myself and the great, inspiring human that is Bruce Lyon. So, also for all the listeners, I'll just invite us to arrive in this space, wherever that is in this current moment for you. I know from history that there's people listening from all over planet Earth and from all different walks of life, all different ages and demographics, beliefs. And so let's just take a moment to remember not the differences, but the commonalities, the uniting seed, and the presence that resides within us all. Bring some awareness to this human form, to the body that inhabits the soul on this time around. And just some words that I'm offering. Dear beautiful creation, on this day, please facilitate a loving connection between Bruce and myself. Guide our tongues so we can speak what needs to be said and we can hear what needs to be heard. May we move through this conversation with open hearts, curiosity, tenderness, grace. May we remember those who came before us. The ancestors are with us today. They never really left. And those who will come after us. May we remember the gifts of life, like the breath, the water we're drinking, the soil we're standing on. And with that, just taking 3 breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. In, Anali. Out. Skilama. In again. Anali. Skilama. One last one, holding at the top. Anali. Skilama. And with that, we're in. And inviting us back into space. Thanks for doing this with me, Bruce. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
So on this day, what's most alive for you?
Well, actually, right now, what's most alive is a deep confrontation around love. You know, like I'm in the middle of a process here with the 60 people. We do a training, and you know, the thing about being a teacher is you really have to practice what you preach, you know, and so whatever is coming up in the group field is also coming up in me. And right now, this morning, I'm feeling a very tender part of me that doesn't trust love, you know, like in the face of love arriving, and anything that's not loving comes up to the surface. And so right now I'm wrestling with a part that is kind of newly emergent, that has not yet been penetrated by love. So I'm going to dance with that.
Yeah, how do you approach that? What's happening internally now as you feel this dissonance?
Well, I think it's an
this
ongoing
resistance?
journey. I mean, the deeper your journey into love, the more of these pieces, you know, come closer to the campfire. And so it's a combination of fierce compassion. You know, the compassion part is, oh my God, another part of me has just arrived on the scene that's ready to be loved. But the way that it's ready to be loved is by pointing out all of the ways it's not loved and never been loved and never could be loved. And, you know, so because to be loved means the end of its separate existence. So the compassion is, wow, there's a huge risk. You know, this part has survived in some recesses of my psyche for all of this time. And its complaint is because it's afraid. And so I have compassion for that. And at the same time, the fierceness is not buying its story that it's not loved, because quite obviously the whole universe is love. And so it's just time for that piece to come surrender. So it's a little bit like, you know, I don't know if you have kids, but, you know, taking a child that's afraid of the dark and sitting with it and having compassion, but then also trying to move it through the boundaries of its fear. So, yeah, that's my process. Sometimes more effective than others. Depends on how long the part has been buried and how much attention it needs in order to, like, you know, bring it across the threshold. So that's my work today.
Beautiful.
And I think it ties into our conversation too, because so much of the work that I do is people, looking for love and trying to find love, trying to realize that they are love. And a lot of that plays out in relationships. And it's only really when you're deeply in a relationship, when love shows up in a way that it never has in your life before, that you then encounter the places in you that are resistance to love. It's quite ironical that everybody says that they're looking for love, but love is really the most terrifying force in the universe, because it creates an end to all separation inside you. And so a lot of people are looking for love, but not many people really want to find it, because finding it is a kind of annihilation to the separate seeker.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
I want to give you some context. So basically, a friend of mine, she did the temple training a while back, and she recommended me, to check out your work, and so I did. And she started off with a video that you did, like a talk that you hosted a couple of years back. I think it's the From Romance to Reality one. Mm-hmm. And so I listened to it multiple times, and then I was just like, wow, okay, like this guy is really observing the dynamics of these forces like very well, and you assemble them in a for me by that time like new way, and put it into a different frame and offered a different kind of view on it. There were some questions arising in me, and usually when that happens, the beauty of this format here is that I can reach out to people to then ask them those questions that arise. So we're very happy that we're having this conversation, and definitely want to, and we were in the middle of it already. So we're speaking about love. So here we go. Boom. That's, right there we are. But just a tiny bit of context, maybe for the listeners, I think would be helpful in order to understand where you are today. So how did you, and you moved through different professions. I know that by preparing for this. And so I'll just open up the space, however long, however short you feel like, to touch on a couple of, for you, like milestones and things that you feel like bringing up that have, shaped the course of, your evolution in a significant way.
Yeah, well, in order to maybe keep it brief, I'll try to get to the root of it, which was, I think we our work in the world is to provide what's missing. In other words, whatever most deeply breaks our heart about existence on this planet is a sign that something matters to us, and finding a way to be the solution that you most see as missing really is the life work. And for me, the journey, like the core heartbreak for me was I went to university at 15, and I thought I'm finally going to go and someone will help me unpack the mysteries of the human soul. I'll help me unpack the mysteries of what I feel inside me. What is it? What is love? What is being human? How do we unfold the magic of who we are in the world? And the disillusionment was, really, my experience of university was that it was not that at all. In fact, it was worse than school in some ways, because it was all about who had thought what when, and having to build this whole structure of thought that was not to me about the soul at all. And so I went looking then, okay, well, where are the mysteries being taught? Because some part of me remembers that I'm not just here to get a good job and make a living, and I'm here for some other reason, and it's got something to do with love. It's got something to do with the mystery of arriving here as a soul and trying to figure out how to bring the love that I know in the core of me to this world. So, of course, I did the wandering seeking thing, went to the different types of things that were on offer, and went and snuck around the pyramids and the Acropolis and sniffed out where the mysteries had once been to try to get some kind of, reference point. And then quickly realized, well, it's probably going to be an inner search. So I set up the inward journeys, and did the leaving the world body for a while to go back to the place where my soul came from, to find out, well, it didn't work out that well. It wasn't like the brochure, going to Earth was not like the brochure. And then basically that's led me to spend my life helping create spaces where humans can address the deeper parts of their being, and so that there aren't generations lost in terms of being able to find out a reference point for the deep process that they know is going on inside them, which is they didn't come to join the mortgage queue and join a civilization that's destroying the planet in its last, survival throes. They came to be a solution to a different kind of world, and they came to unpack them from inside them and to find each other and to open the gifts that they brought. So yeah, my life's work really is about healing that deep soul wound, that the soul doesn't matter here, that actually love matters at the end of your life, maybe, or, once you've got things sorted, it's not the primary thing. But for me, it was always the primary thing, and anything that was less than, a deep question into what is love was not really worth my time and energy. So that's led to helping create culture and education and places where the soul and the question of the soul is the paramount thing. It's not something tacked on at the end after you've survived, but something that if you do not breathe love, then survival is not worth having. So it's the primary and most important question. So I guess that's the short version.
Yeah. When was the first time that you became aware of this, let's say, drive of yours to seek love first?
Well, I feel like, part of that journey of waking up was trying to figure out why humans seem to be the only species that were not in harmony. Like my first lovers were dolphins and whales, and I learned how to scuba dive and went into the ocean. I'm like, actually, I belong here. I can feel the love here. Mm-hmm. So what is it about humans that are locked in their separate identities that are wrecking the biosphere? So I started out in biology and marine biology, and then went into psychology to try to answer that question. Like, well, if we're part of nature, how come we've lost connection to nature, and how come we've lost our capacity to love? I mean, humans are cruel. I mean, not all humans, and not in their essential nature, but the way that we have been conditioned in our society produces very cruel, self-centered humans. And I didn't want to be part of that. I wanted to be a dolphin or a whale or something else that actually I could feel, that I didn't have to chop off whole parts of my being in order to fit into this idea of what being a human was. So I feel like that was part of my initial awakening, is what I actually felt ashamed of, Maxie. And it's so tragic when I look back on it that I kind of felt ashamed that I wasn't able to shut down my love. I wasn't able to shut down my sensitivity. And I figured that I would be much happier if I could just chop that part out, that I would be a greater success in the world that was presented to me. I mean, I was intelligent, and I could achieve lots of things, and people tried to give me scholarships and so on. And I felt there was something wrong with me. I felt that actually, that if I could just shut that sensitivity down, then I could fit into the world, and I could be what everybody wanted me to be what my father wanted me to be, and society wanted me to be, which is a good, functioning, successful person. And the heartbreak is that it was about 10 years before I really could have enough self-esteem to know that that part that I couldn't chop out was the best part of me. It was the part of me that remembered what mattered and refused to let that go when I was offered the temptations of the world. So I think that's a heartbreak for whole generations of young people that are encouraged. It's not just that the world is not supportive of the soul, it's sometimes actively hostile to the very best part of what it means to be human. And I find that to be a tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. And I mean, when you look around in history and you see especially the young humans just very intuitively feeling there's something off here without even having the cognitive framework of what that could even be. It's coming from a very deep place. There's a knowing, there's a remembrance, right? Actually, I feel like there's a very small time window in which that happens. Before then, actually, after they're able to be sort of realized, or to realize that, and before all of the social like adaptation happens, there's a short time window in which that can actually take place, in which I actually feel like also the work I guess you're doing, and me too, in somewhat, I could say with human evolution and elevation, and unlocking of the human potential and investigating the deeper parts of the human experience. I feel like this is the part where so many seekers are returning to when doing this inner work. They're returning to the knowing that they once had and then forgotten about. And yeah, so I feel you. That's a long-winded way of saying that I feel you, and I feel like many people feel and share this pain that you're describing. So
Yeah, well, it's a hard thing to do when you're a teenager, like because that's the time you're talking about really is pre-puberty and then after puberty, where there's enough of the soul coming through to like find a bit of rebellion from what is around you. But it's a hard thing to do, to back yourself in the face of the world. And I remember that time and reading in my diaries where like either I'm wrong, or the world's wrong. And I'm not a megalomaniac enough to think that the world is wrong, so therefore I must be. And I must not be getting the picture,
yeah,
And I think that sense of betrayal that young people feel from the leaders and the people they look up to in the world, there's a sacred wounding there that
yeah.
that can take a few generations to heal, and I think we're in the process of that now.
Yeah, I remember something in the preparation for this that you shared in an interview once. It's already a couple of years back, and I liked how you framed it. You were like, um, I don't like or there was a part of your life where you didn't like to be human, which is what you just described, and you were like, you were not, and I really like that framing. You didn't like to be the representative of humanity and of humans in the nature, in the wild. When you were outside, you were like, I'm the representative of this species that is behaving in this cruel, destructive way. I really like that framing. So I guess in turning that into question is like, so what then? Like what were the steps? What did you do?
Yeah, well, the inner steps are that you actually do have to back yourself. So that's gnosis. That's the inner journey of saying, well, actually, even in the face of the world, and the current dominant culture, I have to find something worthy of my life inside me. Like I have to find access to something that I trust deeply inside me. And I have to look around, broaden my scale, like find great literature, or like I'm not the only human being who's felt this way. I'm not the only human being with love. So even though the civilization may be giving me a message, there are pockets within that I resonate with. And so that's seeking, it's your podcast title, going in and seeking out, like finding the places inside me which I could feel like, well, this is true for me. Like I'm if I'm true to this, then I'm not going to betray myself. So that's important, to find something inside me that I can feel is solid ground, that is the love that I'm seeking. And then to seek outside to see, where do I resonate with, not just in terms of what isn't working that I'm here to actually support to change, but where are the places, where are those voices that I resonate with, where are the people that are speaking and saying and living and demonstrating something that my soul resonates with. So it's a gradual process of building networks of connection. I mean, I think I finally joined the human race about 20 years ago when I taught enough globally and I met enough people globally that I could finally say, like, I know enough human beings that I'm proud of. I'm proud to be part of that sub-tribe of humanity. And so, yes, I will finally join becoming human because I've met enough humans that are worthy of my heart's respect.
So what do these humans have in common?
I think that very thing. I mean, unfortunately, when I was young, and one of the tragedies, even in my country, New Zealand, is that it's had one of the highest teenage suicide rates in the world. And if you think about the fact that when you have these cultures that have lived for a length of time, and they're now providing many of the things that they didn't have because they came from war generations and so on, and now, yes, you have high quality of life and high standard of life and so on. Well, then why do young people not want to live it? It's because they didn't come here for that. They didn't come here to live the generation before them's ideals. They came to live something new and something fresh. So actually many of the people that I knew in my youth that I felt like were the brightest because they didn't bend their knee to the culture, that they stayed true to themselves. Most of them never made it till 30. The suicide or drugs or some other thing took their souls out. So the first thing for me was like finding people who had enough courage to go their own way in the face of the enormous pressures to conform and to shut down the soul and to shut down their connection with their deep knowing in order to fit in and survive and so on. So one of the qualities was courage, the deep courage, the spiritual courage to stay true to themselves in the face of those pressures. And then the second thing is, the soul shines. When it shines, it's like the sun. It's not trade and exchange. It's not looking for return, even if that return is adulation or money or whatever it is. But the soul just has this nuclear explosion in the core of the sun that wants to shine and can't help but shine. So that quality to just shine when they have found the courage to live their life, to begin to shine it in a way that nourishes those around them and the world around them, so, and that can look many ways. It doesn't have to be great artists or whatever, but to feel the soul shine of others and to know that they've not only survived, but they've found a way to make a contribution that is loving and unconditional, and that even makes the nature around them happy, not just humans. So then I feel like, okay, this person has survived and they've found a way to bring through what they came to bring. And those two qualities like draw me to people.
Right. Two things came up. One is what on your, like, very personal to you, what kind of modalities, what kind of practices, were part of your remembrance, also before you've met these people? I guess you needed some sort of inner anchor, right? You needed some way to connect to yourself to remember this, because otherwise you just get lost in the noise. You drown basically, right? So what was your anchor?
Well, I told you, the fact before, scuba diving, getting under the ocean was like a huge thing. I didn't want to come up ever. Like, really, this is my first taste of meditation. So being in nature was that, and then I learned to meditate. Learned to actually find an inner process, and also my poetry as a young man was so powerful in terms of like actually listening to what my heart was trying to say. So creativity, time alone in nature, adventure, like pushing the limits. Like as a young man, I loved extreme sports because that's when I actually knew that I was alive, right on the edge of high risk. So, and inner creativity, which started with poetry and then became kind of self-inquiry and writing, meditating, shamanic work, starting to really meet and respond to inner teachers that have been a powerful influence in my life, so that I could feel, even though I may feel alone in my outer social environment, I have strong allies, and I know where to get help as a soul from the inner worlds.
And then the second thing that came up is time. Like it's adding to what you've shared. So, what part would you say of this remembrance was done by yourself, and also growth in general was done by yourself, and what part was done in relationship, in relating?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's both, that time alone to contact the core of you, so you know who you are. So then actually, because if you're relating from a place of not knowing who you are, then it can be pretty messy. But then the power of relating to me, and it came later. Like I'm probably more on the inner sovereignty path than I am in the relating path. I remember getting to a point in my life thinking, "Wow, I'd be quite happy and give me any function or warrior job to do in the world, and great, but relationship, like the true exposure of my core and intimacy with another person, that actually feels like more of a challenge." And so I feel like that's also critical, because relationship as a spiritual path means that you have to test out the deep knowing that you have in the core of your own being in relationship with others, and in intimate relationships, often with one other. At least allow one person into the deepest recesses of your being and enter theirs. And so I would say go within to find yourself, but get into relationship to figure out how to be that self in the world.
Yeah. Now, I feel like this is the part of the conversation now where we laid the groundwork for a little bit of the context of what it is that you're doing now. Because as far as I understand, from what I can see today, much of your offerings and much of what you're doing at the Highden Temple as well is about relating, and also finding. And I think like one phrase you are using is like you accelerate the soul's growth within these trainings, and you don't do that just by being by yourself. I guess like that's one part, but then there's also the relating part. So can you just speak to like the work that's been offered today by you and by the people you're working with, and what's the is there a destination? Is there a goal with what you're doing, that you're pursuing?
Yeah, well, I think it's part of every human has to make a choice of how do you live these times that we're in on the planet in a way that's in integrity with yourself. And the grandiose version of it would be that we're in civilizational change, and mystery schools and temples like Highden are like nurseries for testing out new ways of being together, that then if they work, they can be little seeds for new civilization. So the big context is civilizational change, and trying to find new ways of being together and being in relationship with each other that do have love at their root and are translatable to others. And the more simple way is if my life is about living from my core and living from love, then who else wants to do that? And how about we get together and make that a priority? So the two aspects, I suppose, are one, that you actually do have to separate a little from the pressures of what's around. Like if you lived in Tibet or so on, and where they have tulkus and the recognition of reincarnation and all of those things, that they recognize that actually souls that are genuinely here to serve the collective are a treasure. And they should be gathered together and supported to give their treasure. So the idea of a mystery school is it's a place where people's souls are drawn to be with other souls like them and to unpack the gifts that they have for the world, so that they can then go out and give those gifts. And that does require sometimes a slight separation from the world to go through the initiatory process of stabilizing yourself in the soul when you're in a hostile environment with a lot of pressures, so that you can bring the gifts that you have. So that's the personal journey. And then there's the group journey, because the individual is linked to the universal, and between the individual and the universal is group process. And because the soul is gift economy, not transactional, when you get a group of powerful souls who all are here to love together, their acceleration of their personal development is huge. Through meditating together, through relating together, through working through all of their issues. I mean, one of the things that's part of the modern world, where Highden used to be a Catholic monastery for 50 years, and then, at those times, spiritual seekers often were split off from their sexuality, for example, with all of the problems of that. And so how do you integrate deep spirituality into personal relating, and including sexual relationship with others and emotional relating? How do you learn how to bring love to those areas that generally have had a lot of repression and a lot of, shadow in them? So, it's nothing less really than the demonstration of love all the way down to the physical plane. Because one of the difficulties, I think, for most spiritual paths is that they're fine in the philosophical area.
Yep.
And then they may be even good at the heart, but when it gets down to their money and their sex and the way they use power in the world and how they treat, the land around them and all of those things, well, then you get to the very difficult, crunchy parts of walking your talk and living love in the world. So having a whole bunch of people, like the moment we have 60 people here, who are all amazing people, in an intense pressure cooker for 6 weeks, then lots of opportunity for things that don't know love to come to the surface and be loved happens.
For sure. Oh my God. Yeah, I can imagine. So I guess, I don't know, like what's coming up for me straight away is like the road worth traveling, and like a very, it sounds awesome. And at the same time, like I can feel it through the screen. I can feel the energy and the heaviness that comes with that. Like, and I'm thinking from a facilitator point of view, in your shoes, I'm feeling responsibility. That's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling responsibility for opening up a container for people to explore these parts of themselves. So I guess putting that into a question is like, because like you said, like these things are not particularly taught in school. Like there is no manual of like how to do these things. So like how did you start when forming the Highden temple, and like was it the same process as it is now, and what kind of role do you specifically play in that? Like will you I don't know, like will you tell people basically and how they can do it, and like what's the process like?
Yeah, well, of course, it's developmental. It's ongoing. Like you say, it's pioneering. So it's not like there's a roadmap to follow. So in a way, it kind of calls to pioneering type souls. And it is, there's a deep spiritual responsibility too, because, even though people may be, their souls may be longing for something deeper in mainstream society, they're still somewhat protected by the social norms and so on around them. When you really start to awaken, then there can be a feeling of great isolation, because at least
Mm-hmm.
you fit it in before. And now when you're in a process of waking, it's like, okay, but then where do I belong, and how do I function in the world? And sure, it may be great to live my sole purpose, but how am I going to make a living? And all of those things like create enormous tensions for people. So nobody said waking up was easy. Otherwise everyone would have done it. Like most people's souls choose to stay semi asleep in order to function in the world. But if you're a bright soul that just cannot put up with that, you've got to be alive and awake no matter what. Well, then you're going to have to face the consequences of that. And society, is a container to kind of try to keep everybody alive and able to function and integrate with each other. And spiritual communities have also served in the past as places where people could do their soul work. So there is a responsibility in helping somebody open and then say, okay, but now what? How am I going to integrate that into the world? And of course, there's a difficulty with that because the world is not receptive to that. That's why you're pioneers. If you're a pioneer, you're going to be opening up new territory, and you're going to have to find support for that in new and wonderful ways. So part of the responsibility is eased by the warning on the label, like this is not for everybody. In other words, it's a calling, it's a vocation but there needs to be places where people who do have that calling, who are willing to take the risks of living a life uncommon and choosing that, saying yes to that, then there has to be places where they can go hang out with other people like that. So yeah, it's not a mainstream consumer-driven reviews on TripAdvisor, money back if you're not satisfied kind of thing. It's high transformational work, but of course, that's also part of the difficulties of leadership in it, is because when things go right, it's amazing. When things go wrong, then it's somebody is got to be responsible. That's the way the world out there works. So it's very much a balance between way showing people, like letting them see that there are journeys and paths that they can take, and giving the power back to them so that they know the consequences and the risks and the so on at every step in the way. The difficulty with initiation work is that if you think in your own life, how many of the things that truly woke you up would you have given your consent to in advance?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I bet there's not many, So the part of us that wants to know everything in advance to make sure that we're safe is often in the way of our initiatory experiences. And we've almost outlawed, like let's look at the biosphere, for example. It's quite obvious that we're in serious difficulty and trouble. But if we center humans' emotional care as the most important thing on the planet, when it's almost making it illegal to disturb our mental health and our emotional feelings by giving us too much information about what's actually happening in the world, because it's making us uncomfortable, and we don't want to be uncomfortable. So if you create a culture that's just based around humans feeling safe and feeling okay, then you actually have to rule out more and more of the real world that is being, that is being damaged by humans' narcissism. And so, how do you have a balance between telling the truth, which is confronting to people's egos, and letting them choose the degree and the speed of their own awakening, and know some of the consequences of that, which people who have gone through the journey do know. It's not an easy conundrum, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems paradoxical. I totally agree. And I can totally relate to, I mean, like a very it's very what's the word? It's not very eloquent, but like no pain, no gain, right? To some degree. And, that's like on a physical level with sports, that's when the muscles grow, is when the pain starts arising, when the burning of the muscles start, really coming in, then, the cells divide and new life is created on a cellular level. So I guess why should it be different on a spiritual or on a soul level? Now, still, and you touched on it briefly, but given that context of it, like what do you see, like, for yourself, like where do you see your responsibility then, as someone who is part of like this initiatory movement, and then you have people come in to, they seek out something. So where would you say does your responsibility start, and where does it also clearly end? Like, what did you come up with that?
Well, I don't know that there's many ways you could cut that one. I feel like knowing yourself and surrounding yourself with other people is important. So in that thing that you mentioned before, the no pain, no gain thing, I'm a high risk kind of guy. And so I surround myself with people who have other perspectives as well, because the masculine perspective often is that no pain, no gain, risk in order to achieve. But the more feminine path is relax, surrender, like go with the flow. It's going to open. You don't need to like force it. And so both those things are true, that they're both important. One side of the paradox is you're perfect just the way that you are. You don't need to change anything. You're amazing. Just learn to love yourself and accept the world the way that you are, and then your next unfoldment will happen. And the other truth is you do not even know who you are yet. You are the universe, wrapped up in a human being, like you can be more than this. There's more potential inside you than you could possibly imagine. Like, wake up, and both those things are true. So how to hold both, how to hold enough of a container of compassion and love for where people are, but also encourage the involvement and evolution of their potential. Yeah, one end of the extreme is that people can come and do a week-long training or 6-week training or whatever, and then because they've come, then they now think that we are responsible for anything that's happened in their lives, every thing that's happened, because we've held out our hands. And on the other side, there is tremendous spiritual responsibility for being very clear what it is that you are offering and what you can support and what you can't, so that somebody can make an informed choice when they come in. So we have like extensive screening interviews and applications and so on. So people have a decent sense of like, well, what is it that I'm coming to? This isn't a consumer experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, that resonates. I mean, I get enabling people to like make an informed decision, right? With everything that comes with. I feel like, yes, I feel like that is important, and to maybe somewhat remain distant enough to the process of someone other than yourself, in order to maybe just mirror back areas where they have, I guess, lost sight of the initial intention, and maybe just guide them back to it, and then from that place make a decision again. Like, is this still what I want? Is this still what I signed up for? Is this still feeling aligned for me? I feel like this could be like a very slight, like, corrective sort of tiny, like sometimes I guess a little bit, it's a little bit tiny, and sometimes it might be a little bit more, less, it depends. Like, yeah, I guess, it's individual from case to case, but yeah, it resonates how you framed this, and also like having both be true at the same time. This is also like, I think, just something that I personally also oftentimes really need to get a little bit more comfortable with. Is like, bro, it's just not black and white. It's in the 50 shades of gray in between, really. That's where.
And also because there's sovereignty and sovereign choice, which is important, but there's personal sovereignty, and then there's your soul sovereignty, and there's accountability to people's personalities, and then there's accountability to people's souls, and then there's the accountability to the biosphere, and then so all of these things are layered, and of course the other difficulty is that you can't you don't know what's going to happen. If you're in a mystery school, part of your teacher is the mystery, not a preset curriculum where everybody knows what's going to happen. Part of it is gathering together in the power of human beings, listening together to the living note of creation. You don't know what's going to happen the next moment. So yes, you need to keep taking times of review and feeling like, am I in the right place? And is this right for me? And all of those things. And then you have to make sure that you're listening to your deep voice, not your surface insecurities. And you need to have other people to help you with that process. And at the same time, keep your own sovereignty so that you are guiding it. And at the same time, surrender to the mystery. So that's a very difficult paradox. How do I stay true to myself and surrender to the mystery at the same time? And of course, it's like sailing. You put your sail up and then you see where the wind's going, and then there are some things outside your control. So yeah, it's kind of extreme sport of the soul.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already starting sweating like now just listening to this and basically like immersing myself into the cognitive world of all of this, because so much, to be frank, and this is my personal take on it, like so much damage also has been done in spaces where these some of those concepts are just like used by the ego of people that not have the best intentions in mind and heart when offering any space. And then you have people come in and, under the promise of, that this is for the highest, leaving more scarred than they came in to those spaces with. And that, I feel like this is, it's a thin wire to walk on. So I'm doing a lot of work within like men's spaces and men's work, as you, I guess, call it. And, there is the confrontational piece for sure. And then there's also the celebration piece of what is actually already there. Like you said, the dance between the masculine and the feminine, it's not like you're not complete, and let's celebrate you for what you are today, while being aware of, what is even more to come, what is there more to unravel. I feel like you said, it's both. But there is a sensitivity around those containers, and I also want to make sure to address this in a conversation like this, that I don't know, like safety, however you define that, for me it's a feeling. Either I feel safe or not. Even in the unknowing, I can feel somewhat safe, and I can feel, this is like, yes, it's pushing me, but I'm still being held in a good way. Does that make sense? I guess it makes.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, and I think it's a paradox, because some people are going to come and leave scarred no matter what, because they arrive scarred and they want just someone to blame for their scars. Like, that's one end of the spectrum. Some people are going to come and have amazing awakening experiences. Some people are going to be in between. You got to strive for as much integrity and safety as possible, and then there's a way in which the universe is just not safe, and you can't replace, you can't, as facilitator or teacher, or you can't become the parent that is making sure that the child is perfectly safe at all times, because even as a parent you can't do that. Part of the heartbreak as a parent is that that you're not able to control. I mean, feel how it must be for parents in Gaza or in places in the world where as a parent that you would do everything, you would give your life to make sure that your child is safe. And you can't guarantee that. And so you've got to live with love on that extreme edge of wanting with your whole being to care for the beings that are in your care and your charge, and knowing that there's a limit to what you can and can't do. So that's the tricky thing with anyone in any kind of space holding role, and part of the masculine loves to hold space. It's a safe space because I'm here and I'll make sure that you're safe. But the thing is, space holds itself. The universe holds itself. It's kind of an arrogance that it's like it's our job to make sure that there's safety. Of course, it's our job to make sure that we show up in integrity with the best love that we can and with the deepest intentions that we can. And then there are mysteries, and those mysteries sometimes are our own shadows. That's why it's good to have good reflections from peers. And sometimes those mysteries are things that are outside everyone's control. And do you still show up for that? So I think that's the journey that we're all on. What will you offer on the altar of love, in order for there to be more love in your life and in the world? And what are you prepared to pay for that? Because it's easy when love is easy, when it's two-way and it's flowing, like in relationship, it's easy. It's much harder when you are loving in the face of resistance and condemnation. And even just in relationship, it's easy to love your partner when they love you back. But if you love them and you're triggering their core wounds and they're throwing everything at you and blaming you for everything that ever happened, that's got nothing to do with you, can you still love them then? To what degree are you going to show up for love in your relationships with others?
Yeah. It's where the rubber hits the road, doesn't it? And I feel like this is a very like we can use that as a beautiful segue into diving a little bit deeper into this is what drew me into like conducting this interview with you, because like I mentioned in the beginning, there's a very, in my opinion, distinct understanding that you have and bring to the table when it comes to masculine and feminine dynamics. There is I guess, a more common understanding of it, right? That there's us humans and both energies are present within, and then we balance them out. And then there's also the gender situation happening. So maybe a predominant sort of, let's say, starting point. And then we do work on ourselves and we get to know both parts better, and we learn about polarity and how we are, relating to one another. And then it's basically like a plus minus situation where the masculine attracts the feminine, and we got to make sure in our relations that both are present in order for there to be somewhat of a magnetism, right? And what I've heard from you does involve those basic understanding, but it goes even further, and it draws a much bigger picture, also when it comes to the soul, and like you were sharing, like the soul's purpose and its actually origin being pure love. But then where I'm always like hitting sort of, or where there's resistance for me, is just like to merge this with the human form. Like it's just like, okay, but like, am I just pure awareness? Like, I don't know, maybe in deep meditation sometimes. But then there's always like this body thing coming back, and there's some urges and some primal things in the way, and like what to do with this thing that is in the way of like just being pure awareness and embodying pure love. So I guess I don't even know if I can put this in one single question, but like, I don't know, just opening up the space around those topics and have you share a little bit what's coming up for you.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I've lived with this a lot of my life, and of course, if you could solve one war on the planet, the gender war would be a good one, and the two camps tend to be like, there's the spiritual camp, which is like, the soul is transgender and beyond, duality, and we're pure love, and that bypasses the very real differences between social constructs and biology and so on, and being in a male or female body. And then there's the more embodied thing is like I'm a man, and so I'm different and I'm in polarity. And so then you have the resurgence of polarity teachings, men should be men and women should be women, to just give people some sense of that's okay. How do you integrate these different energies and their different realities? That we are biology, we have had millions of years of evolution on this planet, and we are also pure love, and our souls come from that source. We have cosmic origins as well as planetary origins. So then the deep question is like, who are you? And as you've worked with men, I spent 20 years working with men, and the truth is I've never met one. Like the great preoccupation with men is initiation into their masculine, and you can understand it because a man comes out of a woman's body, right? So when you go shamanically back through your body, you come from woman. So you need an initiated man in your life, probably not dad, who has walked the path of being able to land the soul fully in a male body, so that they can transmit what that is, so that you can make the transition in your identity to actually be a man. So the big insecurity in male bodies is like, how the fuck do you be a man? Is there anyone around, me, who knows how to do that? And how do they initiate me into it? And but the thing is, if you start out as a man, you're never going to initiate yourself, because you're starting from the wrong place. It's like that Irish joke, if I was going to Dublin, I wouldn't be starting from here. That if you start out as a man, you're never going to get to wholeness, because you're starting from the wrong place. So who you are is love. That's who you are. You may be in a male biological body on Earth, and that may be true and have all kinds of things attached to it, but it's not who you fundamentally are. Because as soon as you decide you're a man or a woman, now you are in a whole mess of conditioned identity, trying to figure all of that out. And then that self, that's separate, that's already been divided from source, is now going to try to find its way back to source. So that's why I say in Romance to Reality, don't understand this if you want to still play the romantic game of being a man or a woman, trying to find your other half and be happy together. Like, if you still want to play that game, best not to lift the carpet. But if you do want to get past the inevitable heartbreak and loss and abandonment and betrayal and all of that stuff, if you want to come back to love inside yourself before you try to love another human being, you're going to have to get past the polarity of masculine and feminine and man and woman. You're going to have to find the part of you that is pure love before you incarnated in a male body or a female body, with all of its social conditioning and all of its biological hormonal drives and everything else. So my approach to people is, yes, you need to honor your biology, and you need to honor all of the social conditionings. Yes, it's true that men have had this kind of conditioning on the planet, women have had this kind of conditioning, there is gender imbalances. But if you want to find love, you've got to start with love. Unless there is gender equality in your own heart, you're never going to achieve it in the world. And, you can see this in male bodies. Just if we take the conditioning for a moment, the two messages that you're given as a male in normal male society is, one, don't be a girl. Like, that's how you know you're a man, is like, don't be a girl. So the very first place in your psyche you have to exile is your young feminine. You got to throw her out, not be a girl. And then the other message is, and respect woman. How can you respect the feminine on the outside when you've thrown her out on the inside of your psyche? So it's a lose-lose game. You can't cut off a part of yourself and then respect that self in the world. The most that's going to happen is that you're going to project your own cut off part onto somebody else and make them carry it, and you'll take their projection on for you, and now you're in the romance game. So the very first piece of work that I encourage men and women to do is reclaim their wholeness, which means reclaim their connection to their soul. And all souls are beyond gender, they're beyond race. Now, you can't use that as an excuse not to deal with the very real gender and racial inequalities and issues in the world. But if you don't start from that place of love, then you're starting from a place of separation and hurt and pain, trying to come back to love. So my encouragement for people is to is to not deny all of the realities of their conditioning and their gender, but to try to get beyond them. And the way they get beyond them is by bringing those two polarities inside them into union and to feel the love that's behind them. And then you can enter your masculine, and your masculine in a male body may look different than a female body. And a lot of people would argue with this too. You know, part of the whole transgender non-binary movement is, I think, at its best, the emergence of the soul, because it's saying we're not going to be stuck in these boxes. At its worst, it has also its own issues and problems, because anything the ego can get hold of and turn into separation. But the first work of love is to come into reconciliation inside the body that you're in with love. And so I know in my case that meant developing in partnership, really understanding that a partnership is a foursome. And in fact, if I'm in a male body and let's say I'm cis or heterosexual or whatever, and I want to connect with a woman, I need to know that I'm dealing with both the masculine and feminine energies in a woman's body. And so if I just want her to carry my feminine and be feminine for me, what's going to happen to her masculine? Eventually it's going to be resentful. So if I'm engaging or connecting with another human, let's say I'm in a male body and I'm connecting with a female body, I would make sure that I talk to her masculine as well as her feminine. And I want to make sure that she understands that I have a feminine in here, that she can't just project masculine on me, that my primary partner between my masculine is my feminine. And so if she wants a harmonious relationship with me, she also needs to be in relationship with my feminine and treat and give her equality. So there's a big issue in the world of, women wanting equality with men in terms of like money and power and so on. But there also needs to be equality between the sisterhood. And there's often a desire for people to be equal, but the equality that they're seeking is skewed towards the masculine. And there is also an equality in the feminine, which is I have a right to be treated as somebody who that relationship is important to, and that has feelings and has sensitivities and cares about humanity. I have a right to be treated as an equal in the sisterhood. And in the same way, everyone in a woman's body or a man's body has a right to be treated as equal in the brotherhood and not labeled just because they're in a body that's different from me with all of the conditioning of that, which is what produces the gender wars. So coming back to love as an inside job between your masculine and feminine, I feel like it's an important part of the journey of healthy relating. So there was a bit of a long, journey, but it's a complex issue, but it's at the root of it, it's actually quite simple.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's simple, not easy, right? That's
Exactly.
how we can describe these kind of things, right? It's a conundrum. Yeah, and I reached the same Now here I am sitting here, and basically when really tuning into those teachings, also for me now as as a podcast host, like what the fuck do I say now? It's like, because honestly, like these kind of like insights, they like lead you to a crossroad of a decision to some degree. I've been there in other parts of my spiritual journey when it comes to a deeper part of awakening, I would say, and the infrastructure of our existence. Basically, when you really like drill deep, then all of the concepts that have served you right up until this moment, they go out of the window immediately, and or they get questioned at least. And basically, then it's just a dance between the ego and like the higher part that has realized some stuff already and is past that, to wrestle about like, okay, like who gets the last piece of the cake somewhat. Like, and for me, that's just like, with all the stuff that I now have experienced and learned and also reclaimed for me to be true, man. Like, I walk around basically feeling embodied in the truth of understanding my polarity and my like masculine and feminine balance. Like that's my understanding of myself as a biological man. Like I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with these concepts that I've learned, you know, and I've seen in containers, and I've seen somewhat play out well in relationships as well. But if I was to really dip my toe in now deeper into the understanding that truly there's even one more layer, like get rid of that male thing and that female thing and focus on the soul's like neutrality in love. Like, dude, I'm just like a newborn. I don't even know what the fuck to do when going out of the door tomorrow. I'm just like, okay, like, so, I mean, and I guess in putting that into question is like, so have I just not understood it then, like, deep enough? Because I feel like what will really put me back into trouble will be, for example, like my physical urges, I guess, would be probably something that throws me off, right? Like if I was to meet a woman tomorrow that really sparks my interest and my curiosity, well, right now I would rely on what I've learned from doing men's work and being in integrity and being, I don't know, a man of my word and holding space for her and doing all of that, those kind of things. Like, what do I do if that doesn't no longer apply?
Like, it's not so much that it no longer applies, but that your map has got more complex. And of
Right.
course, the map is not the territory. All of these are concepts, but walking the territory is a lifelong initiatory journey. What I'm trying to do though is help people start out with the same map, so that you don't have a different map if you're a man and from a woman. Of course, you have differences, but the territory that you're exploring is the territory of the human soul. And so if you are going out with a more complex map, yes, okay, you might meet a woman, let's say, and you might notice you have a biological response. Okay, that's my biology. You know, I'm attracted to her or I'm not or whatever. And then you also have an emotional conditioned response. Like,
Yes.
is there
Yes.
some part of my own feminine that's projecting? And then you also have your work from your men's work, which is like, have I learned how to be in my healthy masculine, which is be able to, you know, hold space and have respect and so on. Yeah. And then you might add, and now am I also consulting my feminine to see, like, do I feel safe and held respect for and so on from her masculine? And then you're also adding the nuance of like, and what's my soul saying to her soul? Like, what's our conversation happening here that's beyond all of this? And so if there's a part of you that can process all of that together, then you're making choices from a more and more sophisticated place where you're not just knee-jerking reaction to your biology. You're not just like following the social norms. You're sitting in your deep center and you're drawing information from all of these different parts of the council of your being. And then you're, you know, therefore making a more wise and intelligent interaction. So, you know, a lot of people would be like, well, that's way too complex for me. I just want, you know, like, I just want to meet someone and be happy. Okay, great. But, you know, in that process, you're going into the territory and you will end up creating a map
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, and I mean, like, okay, well, and like, I'm aware of that, and still, that's, you know, I embarked on this journey, you know, going out, looking in. That's what we do here. Like, I want to know.
Yep.
I want to at least know and have these conversations, and then sit with it and see for myself what the journey will come up and what it will bring, and you know, and I, like I said, you know, I've stood at those crossroads spiritually a couple of times where I also actively decided right up until this day that there are some truths that seem, at least today, as I'm sitting here today, I'm not ready yet to embody them. I understood it. Like, I understood it, and I even felt it at some stages, but there's some other stuff to resolve first. And at least I'm aware of that. Like, and I take responsibility for that. I don't blame anyone else for that. I take responsibility for that myself. Now, back to the relating part. It's just a question that interests me personally, but then also many of my listeners, as we were speaking about like polarity and relationships many times on this podcast. And there seems to be an ever evolving right understanding of the superior way of relating with another and how that is being called, basically, and how that looks like between between two humans. Like, is it exclusive? Is it non-inclusive? Is it free flowing? Like, what's the superior one? Like, what is the more evolved one? And there's so many different parties, basically, claiming the
Yeah.
truth. So, what's your take on that?
So you're talking about, polyamory or open relating or
Exactly,
monogamy or like all
exactly.
these
That's it.
different forms. Yeah. And
Mm.
of course, like anything else, these paths are paths, and ultimately love doesn't have a path. So it's the same as parenting. You can follow good parenting, but ultimately you're going to be faced with some questions that are like, what does love do here? And I don't know. And I think it's easier for people to follow paths. And there's you can have monogamous relationships which are not very loving. They're really just a trade and exchange world, and there's a lot of fear in them. And you can have monogamous relationships which are deeply loving. The decision two human beings have to just dedicate themselves to each other can be an exquisite high form of love. You can have polyamorous relationships which are really just promiscuity dressed up, and you can have polyamorous relationships which are really a deep test of what it is to love more than one human being and to negotiate all of that. So the path itself is not the answer, and the part of us that wants to follow a path, that wants someone to tell us what to do and what to go into in order to achieve happiness or success, that also is part of the problem, because maturity is to understand the very thing that you said, that there are some things that I get and there's some things that I'm not ready for and there's some things that I am. So wisdom is not knowing the right answer, but the wisdom is knowing what's the next step for me, given all of the possible steps that I could make. What's the most loving step that I can make for
Mm.
myself and for those around me? So then, you let go of like, should I be open or should I be poly or whatever? I mean, because my experience in my life is that every time I have that idea, then something comes along to bring that to rubble. Like my growth has often been formed on the rubble of my last certainties and answers. So um,
Oh,
my
dude, man,
my
I
sense of it is that,
relate. Shit,
yeah,
I relate.
if
I
you're an
relate so
evolutionary
hard.
being, if you're an evolutionary being, you're not going to like hold on to certainty of the way. In fact, sometimes I think my life is more about like an empty signpost pointing in all the directions, not to walk rather than necessarily saying, here, follow me. But
Oh
but what I
man.
do know is that by following your deep core and being as true as you can to what love is moving you to do, and being honest with that with the people that you're loving, then you're finding the way, because that way is a way of uncertainty and care for others and care for yourself in that process and communicating about that.
Yeah, dude, man, I'm having the epiphany here right now. It's crazy. Like, actually, when I'm tracing back the point of like when I got somewhat in trouble, basically, it's the day that I decided for me that like what is the truth for me, and then on that day, in my case, women started showing up that basically questioned this truth that I
Mhm.
made up for myself. So yes, here we go. Uh,
It's like
I
it's like when a
yeah.
couple, like I often say to people, do not as a couple start teaching about relationships, like because that's always the kiss of doom, and anytime anybody sets themselves up as a relationship model for people to follow, like it's almost like it's inevitable that that's going to come crashing down.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I'm curious because like you spoke about that openly that you were in a monogamous or I don't even know if it was monogamous, but you at least was I think you were married once, twice, and one was going for 16 years. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I've had two 17-year marriages, and I've just come out of a 7-year, um, relationship. So I've done intense one-on-one relating as well as many different forms of that. Some of those relationships have been monogamous, some have been polyamorous, some have been monogamous for a time and then open, some have been so I've been in pretty well every relationship form, and I've made just about every relationship mistake. And because part of my pioneering soul wants to understand love, and one of the deepest ways of understanding love is in personal relating. And one of the things that I do know is that I feel deep compassion for just about anyone who's ever tried to love me. And I think everybody needs to do this because, one of the things that we can all do as humans is turn somebody who shows up as love in our life into, the reason why our life didn't work, and it's a terrible thing that humans can do is they can desacralize love. And most of us know when you've been in relationship for a while that it's an illusion to just think that someone, Mr. Right's going to come along and you're going to live happily ever after. Like you don't go study algebra. You don't go study calculus till you've studied algebra. And everyone knows that if you're going to learn in the mind, you have to develop knowledge. But people just assume that their heart, they can just keep safe and protected for 30 years and then suddenly open it to someone and it's all going to work out. But actually, my experience of being a lover is you grow in your capacity to love, and you grow through heartbreak, and you grow through betrayal, and you grow through trying to love and then finding that you didn't love as much as you could, and trying to be loved and then finding that you weren't, or you felt betrayed. So these are all paths of growth on the path of the heart, learning how to love. And mostly as you grow, you realize, wow, anyone who tried to love me the way that I was 2 years ago, like it was impossible because there were things I didn't even know about myself. So yes, if you enter onto a journey, it's a sacred journey with any other human being to come into love together. And often the way you can tell whether you found love is by the way that you end the relationship. If you end it with blame and, there's something wrong with the other person, they just have a narcissistic personality disorder or whatever the story is, then you probably haven't learned the lessons of love yet, because almost all loving relationships, need to end in love in order for them to truly end. Otherwise, they're not over. There's still some journey. So I feel like I've been blessed in my life to love beings who have been willing, at least for a time, to journey with me on this adventure of what love is. And I just feel tremendous gratitude for the time that we've shared. And I now in my life am moving far more into the uncertainty again of like, again, I don't know what love is. Again, I'm surrendered to learning. Again, I'm back to to love, to ask for the next lesson. And a lot of it has got to do with group love now, not necessarily loving lots of people in a kind of polyamorous thing, but in terms of how do I listen to what love wants for the collective rather than so much for my personal journey.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Just wanted to ask you like where you're standing right now, but that answers that. Very interesting. Yeah, it's just, red pill, blue pill, really. Like once you tasted the thing, like you can either close your eyes for the rest of your life or you just, and be sort of like, I don't know, trying to get back to sleep, or you continue the journey. And I guess taking that as a moment of like, I'm just appreciating and admiring like your dedication of like investigating this. I feel like I certainly haven't come across anyone so far that, you know, committed themselves as deeply to, or very few people, to one thing like you did with love. And so, and like you said, I mean, I can, you know, I can feel it through the screen that, you know, that came with much loss, much pain, much grief, much things that I guess you would have, from a, I don't know, like more pragmatic, primal level, I guess would have loved to avoid, but it needed to happen in this way. So I guess just, I don't know, a moment of acknowledgement for that as well. Like I can feel that, I can see that.
Thank you, Maxime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, a deep question, that people have to ask themselves, I think, is what do they want? And for many, the answer would be happiness, um, or, success or something. But I think if the answer to that question is I want to know love more, I want to love more, I want to, then, um, then that you set up a journey. And I think for me that the current mystery that I'm in is, as a relationship ends, I have to decide, what do I want from the end of the relationship. And the deep answer, one that's not always easy to live up to, is I want to come out of it loving more, which means that I have to continue to encounter any parts in me that do not want to show up as love. They want to show up as hurt, or they want to show up as anger, or they want to show up as whatever, to do the inner work of, choosing and making that a priority. Okay, this is what's important to me. If love's important to me, then I have to take whatever circumstances that I find myself in as a path to love more. And so those beings who choose that path, and it's not an easy path, but it's a beautiful path, get the rewards. I do find that love is a very responsive energy. And kind of the irony is, like I said at the beginning, many people are looking for love, but to be love, to make yourself a lover, is sometimes a more difficult path than looking for love, but ultimately much more rewarding, because then the love is living at the core of your being, not in someone else, and not waiting for someone else to show up as that love in your life, because the love is already present in your core.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah, it's deep. It's deep stuff. I guess, would you say you always feel it? Like you always feel like the soul's love on that deep level? Is it like ever present for you?
No, no. I think I started this podcast with telling you that I'm wrestling with a piece I woke up with this morning. That if I go into that piece and like indulge it for a minute, that piece is like doesn't believe in love. It's never been loved. It's like it has got 100 different reasons why everything is counterfeit. So of course I fall into holes that don't know love, and love is not ever present. It's a little bit like courage and fear. That courage is not the absence of fear. It's what you do in the face of it. Um, and yeah, when I feel the places that do not know love, it's heartbreaking. And so to rest in those places and to wait till love arrives is an act of faith. There's a beautiful poem by T.S. Eliot that talks about the dark night of the soul, where he says that, you know, um, I've asked my soul to wait without hope and without love, but there is still faith, and the love and the hope and the longing are in the faith. And so when you have known love, that love has shown up, and you do believe that there is a world of love and that you live in a friendly universe, then when you are not currently in love, that's what faith is for. Faith is to remind you when you're not in love that love's coming. But it may not be coming in the shape that you wanted, or in the form that you wanted, or in the time that you wanted. But sooner or later, love will break through again.
Yeah, that's a hopeful message. And actually, something I wanted to ask you as well, like given the picture that we just drew now here, like something that really still doesn't really line up is like, so given that we are that love, and in that place, in that fullness, in that richness, like in that, yeah, no pieces are missing. Like you are just you are that. Like, wow. And so then, like, why do we even, like, why should there be an urge to relate at all from that place? Like, is it like you serve from a whole cup, you serve from a full cup, and you just want to spread the love that is within you, and compared to basically sharing from an empty cup, and you're wishing for the other to fill that one. Is that a question, that an answer to that question, or like what would you say?
Yeah, my experience of love is that it's like water. It always wants to flow to the thirsty. Like love wants to exponentially grow, and which is why people have children in the best possible sense, because when two people have filled themselves from each other's cup, or filled their cups together, or just because your cup's full doesn't mean you don't want to celebrate and share that with another full cup. But then you naturally want to love what hasn't been loved yet, and or to bring new things into being that haven't, that are new expressions of love. So I feel like love has a drive and a force to extend itself and to grow. And so sharing that with other human beings, both in partnership and in groups and so on, is a way of more and more love entering the world. And, in terms of what you were saying before, too, about if we have all of these things, why would we not show up as love? I feel like there is a question of courage, like to go Christian for a moment, and that mythology, Jesus on the cross, that great abandonment wound of like, why have you forsaken me? And I think the deep pain that most people have in the core of their heart is not that love has forsaken them, but that they have forsaken love, that at some point they have chosen not to show up as love. And when you choose not to show up as love, then the only way is to go back through that agony, go back through that ecstasy of re-choosing it. So I feel like in relationship with others, you can get to keep coming to that place where you get to re-choose and you get to not abandon love at a deeper level. And then that itself becomes a reason, to keep pursuing the path of love, because you get to reclaim more and more of your own core.
How would you
So
say?
what drives you then, Maxi? Like you're doing this work and you're doing this podcast and you're doing your men's work and so on in the world. Like what's the underlying drive that underlies that work for you?
Like, honestly, all I can say is that since I can remember, I cannot even say when that is, it was a very subtle knowing and a drive and a need that I could not put a finger on back then. I can maybe a little bit more now, although now I have to use words to communicate that to you, not even in my mother tongue. So my best attempt is really to say that's what my soul wants this time around. And I'm just a vehicle for it to do it. Like I've tried I've tried to do it less. I've tried to investigate a little less. I've tried to ask a little less. I've tried to conform a little more. Not working, man. It's not working. Jesus, it's not working. I don't know where it's coming from. And it's clearly also not mine. That's also the thing. Like, for me, music is a big thing, a big conduit for transformation. It's coming through me. And, like, and that's also one of the biggest, for me, that's one of the clearest manifestations of how the divine is showing me the way. Because it's clearly, it's a very practical process for me where I understand and see it very clearly that I don't create anything, like me. I'm receiving, because 10 minutes ago there was no song. Now there is a song.
Yeah.
What? Like, where does that come from? And like, there's some other exercises that I really loved from Richard Lang, who is a disciple of Douglas Harding. It's like a philosophical concept around the headless way. So basically, it asks the question of like, do you have a head that you are operating from, like that you're looking out into the world from, basically? And it's a picture that Douglas Harding drew when he was in his office as a psychiatrist, I believe. And it basically shows a POV back then where there was no cameras or something, but he painted himself laying on a couch looking out through the eyes. And you see the feet and you see the body and you see the room. And then he basically started contemplating this, and it was just like, dude, man, like, what is this space that I'm looking out into the world? And then he developed this whole concept of like experiments where he's like, so you look out into the world, you move your hands basically from the front, and then you pass your vision, like your field of vision with your hands. So where do your hands go? Like, do they go into your head? Does your head start somewhere? Does it end somewhere? Does it have a shape? Does it have a form? So it's a really like deep contemplative exercise leading to the conclusion that it's a headless way. It's a space of awareness, truly, that you are in the world, like, with. And that's basically what really drives me as well. It's like this contemplation of like the source, and then I use different modalities and forms to investigate that with, basically. And then it sometimes there's a little bit more resistance, like I say right now, especially in relationships, because I've set myself out on the mission of being a man of integrity and all of these kind of things. So basically, yes, that gets questioned now all the time. And and there's just a big gap in what I've experienced between my understanding of things and my ability to embody that and live that. It's just like there's like, sometimes the gap is smaller and sometimes it's a bit bigger. And with that whole relationship thing, man, it's a big gap. Like, oh man, like, because I understood so much, I feel like, cognitively, but then, you know, when she so I'm a heterosexual man, so when she stands in front of me, I'm just like, sometimes, oh man, like, everything's out the window now. You know, it's just like, okay, now define that for yourself again. And through stuff like the Headless Way, and those experiments as well, I find myself, I find my way back a little bit quicker nowadays. The remembrance, I feel like, on you know, who I am truly, and I try to make decisions from that place, if that makes sense. Bigger decisions, I try to make from that place.
I hear you saying that you're having to be true to the river that runs through you. You know that when you're true to that river, then things work, and when you're not true, then things don't work. So that you know, whatever that river is as a river of loving transformation, shining into the world. So yeah, I feel that's the balance between how do we show up for what wants to move through us, and at the same time, how do we increasingly embody that in a way that our personal self is fulfilled and becomes more loving. So
Yeah.
yeah, celebrating your journey.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for asking that. I mean, it's it rarely happens that I get asked questions in this space. So very appreciated. Thank you.
Mm.
Um, what um, what are you looking forward to right now? What is lighting you up?
Well, I'm taking a year sabbatical next year, so I feel a little bit like a punch-drunk boxer just getting to the ropes, like I've had an intense, really 2 decades of teaching work to try to bring the pieces that my river threw me into the world. And my soul's exhausted. I'm actually exhausted, but I'm exhausted in a healthy way. When you've climbed a mountain or whatever, I've written my books. I've trained other people. I'm reaching the completion of a whole cycle, and so I'm taking a year off to go back and drink from my own well. And I'm not there yet, but I can feel the breeze of it coming. And so that's what's lighting me up is that opportunity. And I also feel like I'm more in my elder motion or movement in my life right now, and what that looks like for me is taking a little more time to spend with the beauty of this world. Like I know when my mother was dying, that there can be a rush towards when somebody's still alive, trying to preserve their life or trying to make sure that they're okay. And I feel like that with the planet, a lot of my work has been some degree of urgency given the state of the biosphere and the state of humanity, and to try to do what I can to add the flavor that I came to bring. But I also feel like I'm getting to a point where I just want to like sit with the earth and hold its hand, and look into its eyes and celebrate the things that are here to be celebrated. So I'm hoping to be able to take some more time to like be with the beauty of this earth while I'm still here, and to be overwhelmed by it. Death by beauty is my favorite way of dying, and so I feel like I want to spend time again, in that, and the deep contemplation of the extraordinary beauty of this planet and of the beings on it. So hopefully that's in my future, and it would be my longing for that anyway, and that's one of the things that keeps me going.
Right. Beautiful. To end this plane, like, what would we've spoken about love extensively now from different points of view. So if that sparked anything within people that are listening and watching, what would be something that you can share, you can point people to, you can just put it to the space, for anyone who's seeking love?
Yeah, well, I think if that if they're seeking love and relationship, then part of trusting love, I think, is that if you do trust that it's a loving universe, and you do have access, even if you can only get your masculine and feminine to marry for 5 minutes, so that the doorway of love to opens, then a prayer to that love, like, send me not what I want, but what I need for the next journey of love. Like in terms of relationship, a lot of people are looking with their scorecards of like who they're attracted to and what their qualities they want and so on. But actually, that's not the way love works. Love works to connect you with, when you're receptive to it. Love works to connect with you with what you need for the next unfoldment on your own path of love. So So the first step would be to start trusting love and to be in deep relationship with love as an energy. So what we actually support people to do when they come here is at a certain point to marry love, to make their relationship with love their primary union. And then from that place, then love will send you the outer relationships that you need in order to learn the lessons that love has for you. So that would be my prime thing. Rumi says at a certain point, break the legs of what I want. So when you're willing to let go of running your own life, maybe from a place that does not know love, and trust love to come into your life and rearrange things according to the greater mystery that love has, then that to me is the first step. And from that step, you gradually have more and more faith that love will keep showing up and show you the next step, so you don't have to be the one in charge all of the time. So that would be the fundamental. Again, simple but not easy, because it's simple, surrender your life to love, but not easy, because then the mind comes in and says, well, what does that mean? But the heart knows.
Yeah, get out of the way, basically. It's just the only job. Get out of the way. Beautiful. What are the ways that people can get a taste of your work and of the medicine that you are offering?
Yeah, well, a lot of my work is now out there in the world in other forms, like a lot of men's work is, that I've initiated over time that people can go to. There's the work with ISTA, the School of Temple Arts, that I wrote some of the curriculums for, that really helps embodiment and working with the emotions and the erotic life. There's things like the temple training. I've written many books. I've got another one coming out soon. There's lots of my stuff online. So people can find my messages and my work quite easily if they feel to.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you for this. That was fun. That was very intuitive. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this exchange, and I honor your journey, and I honor you trusting me, with this conversation and saying yes to it, to this unknown person from Germany, just, corresponding by email with, and then now showing up on a screen. It never fails to amaze me, to be honest, to do this. And today is just a beautiful reminder of that. And I sincerely just want to thank you for taking this time. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Maxi, it's like I don't often say yes to things like this, but I felt the purity in your energetic. It wasn't even in what you said. So I also want to feed that back to you, that there's something pure in your inquiry and in your longing for that drives your work, and that it's felt. And and I celebrate you, even though this is our only connection. It's been beautiful to be in space with you, and I appreciate your reaching towards me.
Hey, beautiful listener, you have made it all the way through, and I want to take a moment to say thank you. And you can do me an enormous favor. It's all I'm gonna ever ask from you, and that is to go to your podcast app right now, and if you enjoyed the episode, give the podcast a 5-star rating. If you want to write 1-2 words or sentences, even more powerful, even better, thank you already in advance. And also, while you're at it, just click on that follow button, on that bell notification, so that you never miss a new episode. All of that just contributes, and it helps me to increase the reach of the podcast. That means I can attract bigger guests, and that means I can deliver more powerful episodes. So it's a tiny thing. I'm only gonna ask this little favor of you ever, not more. 10-15 seconds of your time, a couple of clicks, that's it. makes a huge difference for me as a creator. So thank you so much.